Yes, I think the ANC's high point was in 2004. I said so then under President Mbeki. And I said then it will be all downhill from here. And I think you've seen that very slow unravelling with a high peak for Jacob Zuma in 2009, but not nearly as high as 2004. And the critical thing is that the DA has said we can't wait for the ANC to unravel. We have to win where we can. And we started at local government level with Cape Town and 30 other municipalities. We started with shaky coalitions because it was very difficult to bring the ANC below 50%. And of course, to govern, you have to have 50% plus one. So we could only get there with these very rickety coalitions. And in some places like Cape Town and other places, they worked. And the whole of the Western Cape is now DA. And if you juxtapose the capable state of the Western Cape and Cape Town, and juxtapose where the DA governs and where the ANC governs, you can clearly see the choice before South Africans. Now, that doesn't mean to say that life is not grim for a lot of newly arrived citizens in the city of Cape Town, for example. It is very, very difficult to provide services to large numbers of people coming in and wanting to find a piece of ground to live in and often invading land for that purpose. But Cape Town is the only place that is keeping up with that demand, at least with the very basics, that doesn't steal people's money out of the major metros. We certainly tried to set up governments as minority coalitions in Johannesburg and Tshwane, and that turned out to be unbelievably difficult. To depend on your arch enemy, the EFF, to keep you in power through their vote is something we tried, but I think it was something that failed. And so the lesson has to be very clear to all voters in this election. If you want stable government, if you want good government, if you want government that really drives policies that attract investment and growth and bring down unemployment so as to deal with the underlying issues that Mr. Mbeki was talking about, the only governments that do that are DA governments. That's why unemployment, despite the massive urbanization to the Western Cape, is much lower in this province than it is elsewhere in South Africa. So that is the critical lesson people must learn. If they want stable, progressive government that deals with the underlying issues that gave rise to what we've seen in this last week, then really they must start by getting a functional, capable party to build a capable state that applies the rule of law and follows policies that can attract investment and growth and entrepreneurs, as Moeletsi says. That is the lesson, and all we can do is keep on repeating it again and again and again until people get it.
So, Helen, that crystal ball of yours that you gazed into 12 years ago and that predicted a lot of what is happening now, if you look into it again 10 years into the future, which you said is so very important for an opposition party to do, what do you see and what can we do to win this war against corruption and to restore law and order in the country?
Well, what I see is this being a major, major disruption that is part of the ANC coming apart. The ANC started coming apart in the 1990s when Bantu Holomisa left the ANC and various other things, and it's been a slow chipping away ever since. There are big catalytic moments such as the formation of COPE and the EFF, but this is another very big one. And I've always said, and I've said it for many years, the real question in South African politics is, do you want the DA's policies, the rule of law, non-racialism, a capable state, policies that grow the economy and create jobs, separation between the party and the state, DA policies, versus EFF policies, party control of the state control of the society, racial nationalism, anti-white racism. There it is. That is the choice for all South Africans. The ANC is divided between those choices. The RET faction is with the EFF, and the constitutionalists would at least mouth the rhetoric that the DA puts into practice. So what we are seeing now is the coming apart of the ANC at the seams. And if Jacob Zuma stays in jail, and if the Constitution works, and if he's charged with corruption, it will be a big victory for constitutionalism. It'll help the ANC come apart, which is what must happen, and it will help South Africa avoid the failed state status that has been the bane of so many other countries on our continent, where the Jacob Zumas won the battle, not the constitutionalists. And so the DA is the home of constitutionalism, and as the ANC comes apart, we have to have a realignment of politics so that you can see the EFF's policies versus the DA's policies as the real choice facing South Africa. In 2009, the Zumaphoria was as big, if not bigger, than the Ramaphoria of 2019. It was an absolute national rejoicing.
So Lenzima Vavi called it the tsunami.
Yeah, the tsunami, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was exactly how it was seen at the time. There was a national rejoicing. Even establishment commentators like Peter Bruce really welcomed the election of Zuma. And we in the DA, I think alone, said this is a very dangerous move. He's a corrupt man. He's going to corrupt our institutions. We'd been talking about state capture for about 10 years by then, and we said he will capture all institutions of state to protect himself and his faction, which duly happened. But we alone saw that at that stage, hence we did all the analysis in the background, but when it landed on a poster, it just said, "Stop Zuma." 2 words that captured all of that analysis behind it. And it was incredibly unpopular at the time. Oh, tone deaf, we aren't hearing what the people are saying, we don't know, we're out of touch. We said, this is our prognosis for the future of South Africa under Zuma. Our job as a political party is to spot the trends, to give them voice, and to warn South Africans. That's our job. And we are saying, stop Zuma.
So it seems like the ANC sort of like has destroyed, most of the promises of the Rainbow Nation. And a little research I conducted earlier on the Rainbow Nation kind of like speaks to a future that sort of like was decimated. And I think the strength, I always say this, I think the strength of the human race is the ability for the different races to come together to build and work together in a very respective way. When you study history, most of the times when the different races have come together to work together on something, we had the greatest outcomes and the greatest products of that cooperation. And whenever each race separates to work individually or to sink in itself, we had the worst features of that particular race come to the fore. And so I believe that there's a strength in working together racially when the blacks and the Asians and the whites and come together to build something. We see this strength in diversity, this effervescent of a different form of creativity that kind of like sparks from the different ways in which the different racial groups perceive and see the universe. I think it's really interesting if we can adopt that kind of stance. And I think that's the advantage South Africa has. That's the advantage South Africa has in that it represents that one nation or a few in the world today that really has the potential to exemplify that strength in diversity, which the world actually needs to see and understand and embrace and actually approve of and emulates the strength in a respective relationship among the different races. But unfortunately, it feels when you listen to most of these other non-black, especially leaders in these political parties, there's a lot of blame on how the ANC might have destroy that future of the rainbow promise which Mandela promised in 1994, and how, you know, things slowly seem to just keep going downhill ever since 1994. So it felt like the more South Africans plunged into the future, the faster the nation moved backwards as South Africa moved away from that rainbow promise. And it's really tricky. But I don't know, what do you guys think about this speech? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Thank you for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please share and like and subscribe, because that's the way you support Kwazemi as a channel, an Afrocentric channel, where we try to understand deeper issues in African history and hopefully develop a collective intelligence on how we wish to build the Africa we want to see as people of Africa. See you in the next one.